Hi, I'm Adi Ignatius, Editor-in-Chief of Harvard Business Review, and welcome to HBR Now. My co-hosts are Josh Mock, who heads Product and Innovation at HBR, and Octavia Gordima, who runs the 2010 Talent Agency. So HBR Now, of course, is the program where we really dive into very timely topics, whether it's COVID or leadership in a crisis or the Black Lives Matter movement or the US election. So this is Election Day in the US. Rather than bring in a political pundit as our guest, we decided to, and by the way, you can get that elsewhere on a lot of other channels right now. We decided to bring in somebody who could help us with our anxiety, to help us be resilient, to help us understand how to keep an enterprise functioning and healthy in such a polarizing political atmosphere. And that guest is Frances Frei, who will be coming in a little later. She's an HBS professor. She's a former senior vice president at Uber and co-author of an amazing new book on empathetic leadership called Unleashed. But anyway, it's election day. So Dave, roll the TikTok.
Okay, I do not remember my first time voting, but someone on this conference actually does remember.
Yes, that's me. I voted for the first time this presidential election.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I became a US citizen last year. Yeah. So this year's a special one for me.
Oh, that's crazy.
So Josh, where are you in your anxiety meter today?
I mean, I'm faking it, I guess. I did vote super early, and there was no line for me where I voted in Massachusetts. But and now I do my best to not, try not to pay attention to too much because it's just not great for me. But I just get sucked back into it at some point during the day. What about you, Adi?
Well, so I remember. Josh and I were at Time Magazine for a while, and I remember when we were at Time. The coin of the realm was access to data that other people didn't have.
Yeah, right.
And that usually took the form of exit polls. And sometimes they were the campaign's own exit polls or, this kind of insidery data that if you had access to, you maybe had a head start. I remember my father-in-law, Osborne Elliott, who was the editor of Newsweek during its glory days in the 60s and 70s. He would call when he had retired and I was at Time, and he said, I am craving exit polls. What have you got? It's different now. I mean, the data, first of all, people don't do that so much anymore. They do it, but don't rely on it and don't have a secret trove that if you had access to it, you'd know what's going on. But I do want to say one bit of data that I think is interesting for today's conversation, which is about the stress and anxiety that people are feeling. So Harris did a poll with the American Psychological Association that found that more than 2/3 of American adults, 68%, say that the election is a significant source of stress in their lives, which is up from about 50% in the previous election. And that more than 3/4, 77%, say the future of the nation is a significant source of stress, up a lot from even just a year ago. So this is an unusual election.
Yeah, I know you feel it. I mean, in every conversation, I don't know about you, Octavia, but it feels like it just, with this cycle, it just, everywhere you go, there really was no escaping it.
Yeah, it's just, this was my first time, of course, but I know for so many people, they're voting in a different way to how they may have done before. Election officials are dealing with an unprecedented volume of votes by mail. I'm in California. I voted by mail, but I was able to use a ballot drop box here last week, but my ballot didn't arrive when it was supposed to. So, there was the panic of calling the registrar's office and finding out that I needed to re-register to vote and doing that again in time. And so I know for a lot of people who've been waiting by the mailbox, it's hard. And then people who perhaps are going in person today. And then there's the what comes next, because the count and what happens between now and then.
I know, when will we know, right? And that just adds to it as well. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so why don't we, let's try to get Frances in here. Let me give her a proper introduction. Again, she's a professor, Frances Frei. She's a professor at Harvard Business School. She's an expert in leadership and strategy. In 2017, she was named Uber's first senior vice president of leadership and strategy, a role that was created to bring her in to help the company navigate its own public culture crisis. She's the best-selling co-author with her wife and professional partner, Anne Morris, of a couple of great books, including the newly published Unleashed, The Unapologetic Leader's Guide to Empowering Everyone Around You. So Frances, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Adi. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, we're really honored that, on this day of all days, you've given us your time. So, but let's talk about this day of all days. So, it's election day, and I think we could use some Frances to help us cope with what's going on here. So, this is an emotional day. We actually gave all of our employees the day off, a kind of wellness day, understanding the level of anxiety about the election, about COVID, about post-election unrest, if there is any. Help us, how do we get through this? How do we keep up morale, our corporate values in such a polarizing moment?
Yeah, so a couple of things I rely on. One, more people have voted, I think, than ever before. Everyone is engaged, which is, in years past, people were trying to convince people to vote. That's a sign of the past. Now we're trying to find out how to vote. And we just heard Octavia checked twice to make sure we're doing it. So we have really broad participation in in this beautiful democracy that we have, which makes me more is better. So that calms me down quite a lot. I think that once we know what happens, once we know who's elected, there's a lot of chatter around the edges of bad things that are going to happen. I don't think any of that will happen. I think we'll have a very orderly transition. And this is just the chatter that people say at the end. People that are more afraid of losing tend to chatter more, just like in sports and in politics. But I find this to be a beautiful day in America. More people are exercising their right to vote. And I think we're going to know the results of that vote, relatively quickly.
So I would say that is truly calming. If you just joined us, this is HBR Now. I'm speaking with Frances Frei. I can see we have people tuning in from all over the world. If you have questions of your own for Frances, please enter them, and we'll try to get to as many as we can later. But Frances, let me ask, so I'd like everything you've said, but whatever happens today, we are in this very polarized, I think over-politicized moment, certainly in the US. And I think it's easy to say, well, we should all just get along, but it doesn't seem that easy, just because people seem to feel that the other side is not just other, but is wrong or ignorant or evil. How do you, and bring it back to business maybe, how do you create a culture that enables people really to move forward together?
Yeah, and we call it a culture of inclusion, and you would have heard about it a lot if you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, gender and inclusion. So here's the beautiful thing about inclusion. If I am inclusive of difference and you are not, I am going to thump you, with a very technical term. So the more inclusive of difference I am, the more success my organization are going to have. This is going to bring forward a type of difference that isn't always brought to the surface. In fact, maybe is brought to the surface every 4 years, if at most, because sometimes it isn't. So the advice I have is that, one, difference is good. If we can benefit from the variation of everyone, we can achieve further. Two, it is really hard to make progress with someone if you have a two-dimensional caricature of them in your mind. So I would not interact with someone until I understood that they were a three-dimensional being. And if I just have that two-dimensional caricature, it's time for me to take a time out. I'm not in a responsible place to be able to interact.
So I think what you're describing is how colleagues get along with one another. But, as leaders, as people who are tasked with bringing an organization, healing an organization if need be, or bringing a culture forward, again, in this sort of polarizing time, what are some of the best approaches for me?
Yeah. So, when we talk about an inclusion dial, you first have to make it safe and welcome, regardless of any difference that anyone represents. That's totally true today. Regardless of what you voted, we have to feel safe and welcome in any organization that we go into. And it's safe and welcome and celebrated. And here's the way to think about it. If you're all set, you just are feeling included, then you should be looking out to see who else could use an oxygen mask. But if you're barely feeling safe, like if it's a really wobbly day for you, you should just be looking for your own oxygen mask and not look to take care of everyone else. So leadership is about others. It's about taking care of others. So be oxygenated in order to help others. But if you're not in a position to be oxygenated, just be super self-distracted until you're ready. There's plenty of us to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, thanks for that, Francis. And, you know, I'm a coach, and this time has been really hard for so many people that I'm talking to. And so many people have said that they just wish they could go into hibernation until it's all over. And coupled with all of the things that we're facing right now with the election, we're all working, you know, in completely different ways to how we've done so before. I know you are in terms of the work that you're doing. One of the things that I noted in the TED Talk that you gave was you advised, don't mute who you are in the world. But as we're adapting to how we're working, most of us are finding us muted pretty often, whether it's on Zoom or WebEx or whatever we're using. And when we do have something to contribute, it's not always easy to use your voice. What are your thoughts on that in terms of how we're working now? Is remote working a new frontier for inequity, or is it an opportunity to break the norms and have a better dialogue?
I think it's the latter. I think it's an opportunity to break the norms. Just for example, all four of us are democratized on this screen. That's just never been true in any room, in any building, in the entire world. Everyone who's on the screen is democratized. That's the first thing. The second thing is we all have exactly the same technology at our disposal. So we're given the same tools, we're given the same size. Now, I think the way in which the meetings are led, that should change quite a lot. But frankly, when we change them on this new world, we're going to want to go back and change them in the old world. So in our experience, we've been doing some studies on this. Meetings are about 2 times as long as they should be. So if you look at any meeting, if it's a 2-hour meeting, that's about 2 times the optimal of what it should be. That if you went back and re-engineered it, you could do just as much, probably more, with less re-litigation in 60 minutes. On Zoom, it's really important that we do that work because it's exhausting to always be looking and to never have a break. And so what I'd say is that we have some basic principles that we have to do, but I think we're going to get to the new frontier of democratizing everyone's input. Like when we chat, it's not like your chat comes up higher than my chat. Who's got an idea here? Like literally, you can't tier them. All of the ideas are the same. So I'm very, very excited about what this technology holds for us.
I love that view. And for anyone watching who perhaps is leading a team, what advice would you give about how they can set their people up for success?
Yeah.
Especially now. I mean, you're bringing your workplace into your home environment if you're working remotely. There's the technology, there's the dynamic.
So I have 2 pieces of advice so one is if you're leading a meeting, ask a question. Somebody from the majority is for sure going to answer the question. Let them. But the next person who wants to talk is also going to be in the majority. Stop that. Instead, after the first person speaks, ask, can someone articulate an alternate point of view? And for the third person, ask, can someone articulate an alternate point of view? You have now just gotten the contours of difference that you've diverged, and now you can go ahead and converge. If we don't do that, we'll converge really quickly, and then it's super hard to converge, particularly when we're tired, particularly from all of the Zoom fatigue. So that's the first one, is that diverge before you converge, and the facilitator should do it because we won't naturally do it. And then the second one is, I forgot.
Well, let me, Brent, nice to see you, even if it is over this, video here. But I'm curious because I also heard you talk when you first came to Uber that there were these behaviors that people would text in the meeting about the meeting. Okay. And here's one of these lines. And, now with Zoom and everything and WebEx or whatever, we've got, there's so many potential toxic behaviors. For sure, because it's much harder. It's much harder to stay focused. So with those, are you seeing those things? And then even when you were at Uber and now, going from the real world into the Zoom world, what should we be doing to really try to drive the type of behaviors that you're talking about that are just more productive?
Yeah. So, I mean, the same way that in real meetings, it was technology off and away. Otherwise, the meeting is going to be twice as long. So do you prefer to multitask or do you prefer to have half the length of the meeting? The same way now. I mean, in the old world, we agreed that we would show each other the top of our heads if that meant that we were multitasking. Now we agree that we're multitasking if we do this. But everyone knows if anyone else is multitasking. It's not like someone is so sleuth at it. And here's the thing. It's a sign that you are self-distracted over other distracted. You've abdicated any ability to lead, and people are going to probably trust you less. But it's at your discretion.
So that's an interesting thing about the trust piece too, because I did follow your TED Talk pretty closely on trust. And
nobody's going to trust you if you're multitasking. They're going to doubt your empathy. They're going to think it's all about you. And by not trusting you, it just means when you have a good idea, good luck getting it legislated quickly.
But is it even, I mean, I love, these are subtle signs that you're talking about too, when you can lose trust over a Zoom call. Is it that much tougher? It feels more difficult to build trust and do all the things.
Oh, I think you can rebuild it. So trust can be built and rebuilt super quickly. A great way to rebuild it is to name it and say, you know what? I was being super selfish. I was doing this. I thought it was better. In retrospect, I should have turned my video off. But instead, I was a distraction. My deep apologies. I'll do better. Gone.
Interesting.
So once again, if you're watching this, if you have questions, please enter them in the comments box, and we will try to get to your questions later. Francis, I want to ask, you have worked for prominent companies that in some ways are notorious, or at least have had their share of unflattering headlines, and that was, Uber in its earlier days, WeWork, even Riot Games. Can you talk about, your experience? You were brought in I think each case to try to help either fix or improve a faulty culture. How does that work? Or can you talk a little bit about your experience? How do you come in from the outside and try to move the needle in improving a culture?
Well, the first thing I do from the outside is, so I like going into places that have big problems, because particularly big problems that if we can solve them there, it gives blueprints and license for many others to solve them. So going to Uber meant they had some very bad problems. And they kind of gave license to a lot of other companies to be like, we have very bad problems too, but so does Uber. So if we could fix it at Uber, it really takes that excuse away, or it gives a roadmap on how to do it. So it was really important to me to go to Uber, with the exception that I had to make sure they were good people. So I did a lot of due diligence to make sure that they were good people. And if you look at, it took us 9 months to do a cultural turnaround. There were over 10,000 people. We separated with 20 people the first month I got there. So we did the cultural turnaround with the same employees, which fits my test of it was good people that were behaving badly. And we were sometimes giving them the wrong secret memo, sometimes not educating them the right way, sometimes putting them in the conditions not to thrive. We were able to clean all of that up very quickly. So I like helping good people win. I have no expectation of perfection. In fact, I think perfection is one of the worst things that has been, it's like super insidious. It gets us, when we think that we can only bring a perfect version of ourselves, we're really inauthentic. We don't show our whole selves. We only show that. We set the conditions for other people to only show an inauthentic version of themselves. So I'm okay with stumbles. It's the getting up and the being righteous when you get up, and being helpful to others when you get up. But I came, Harvard said no to me 5 times before I get here. Like, I'm not a get it right the first time sort of person.
I'm curious though. I feel like so many leaders talk about walking a tightrope today, not wanting to say the wrong thing, and this notion that of like, how do you bring that true self, your true self to work, as your colleague Francesca Gino talks a lot about, when you're constantly worried about, well, I'm going to make a misstep in a political climate or whatever.
Listen, if you're so worried you're going to make a misstep, I'm worried about your base of knowledge. there are, look, and you know this from there, every year I come back to HBS and there are words I used to get to say in the classroom last year that I'm not allowed to say this year. I can remember when meritocracy became a bad word. I can remember all of these things. So you can either handle it as, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, I can't believe it, or wow, I used to be able to say that, I can't anymore, my apologies, let's move forward. Here was my intention. So this tightrope means that you don't really understand. You're somehow, I don't mean this in a bad way, but you're somehow victim of circumstance. I find it all nonsense. Your leading is about taking care of others. Leading is not about your own fragility. Let go of your own fragility and set the conditions for other people to thrive.
But let me re-ask that in a different way. So, if leaders are meant to be authentic, and if someone's authentic identity includes passionate feelings and maybe involvement in, let's say, social and even political issues, that seems like complicated territory, because we're trying to be inclusive and not impose our views. On the other hand, one's authentic self may be all about that passionate engagement.
So I think about authenticity on a scale of 0 to 100. So 0 to 100. So the 0 part, that's like the heartbreaking. I just got to get some of you to show up, right? That's the people that are at 100. Like, I don't need all of you at work. I really don't. Like, you could leave a little bit of it at home. I think that as a leader, you want to be responsible for how you are received and decide what little bit of a treasure do you want to leave at home.
So, Francis, I'd love to talk to you about gender and leadership.
Great.
So last year, the Journal of Applied Psychology published a study from the University of Virginia, and it explored how consumers view male CEOs compared to female CEOs during a crisis. And the researchers found that people respond more negatively to ethical failures when an organization has a female leader versus a male leader. Now, you've done so much work in this area. What's your perspective on how gender impacts leadership during times of crisis such as these?
I have not found any research that has convinced me, and it's not that it's not great research, but I haven't found any research that convinces me that there's that much of a gendered difference in leadership. That is, man, can I show you a wide array of women? Geez, can I show you a wide array of men? And by the way, in 10 years, I don't even think we're going to be having this question because gender is going to be so fluid. So I haven't found anything that makes me feel, aha, that's the leadership style and that's not. Here are things that is, I feel like there's a missing variable and that's what it is, but we use gender. So here's a quick test I invite everyone to do, which is, I line up world leaders by my own assessment of from it's all about them to it's all about others. And my definition of leadership is that leadership is about making others better. So self-distracted to other distracted. And then line up these same world leaders based on how well are they handling the pandemic. I'm not giving you the data. You're getting it yourself. You're doing it yourself. I think you're going to find a startling correlation between self-distracted leaders not doing well with the pandemic, other distracted leaders doing well with the pandemic. So I'm just not sure that gender, I'm not saying it's not, there's plenty of people smarter than I have done more work. I have just never been convinced on the gendered role of it. And I think gender is going to be obsolete in like 10 years.
Yeah. And workplace culture has been coming under the spotlight this year for so many reasons, the pandemic, questions about inequity and social justice, and so many leaders of so many companies have been making headlines for the wrong reasons. Watching this, who do you, without naming names, what do you think, who do you think has handled it best, and what strategies have they used in terms of navigating that mystery?
No, I'll name names. For celebrating, I like to name names. So, I think Microsoft is doing a really terrific job. It's a huge organization, maybe over 200,000 employees. Satya Nadella, Amy Hood, Kathleen Hogan are really the trio that are running it. They get information out there very quickly. They run, they use words like empowerment. They are out there super quick on Black Lives Matter. So I think they have done a really good job. I think Lexi Reese at Gusto has done a really good job. So that would be a smaller company that serves small businesses. on there. So I actually think there are a lot of really good positive experiences to learn from. And here's to me the test. Like, if you're in an organization, if I have to bring up race, the company's not doing that well. If race is brought up more often than I have to bring it up, I'm very optimistic.
I don't want to blow past what you said at the end of the previous question, which is that I think within 10 years, gender will be obsolete. I have a feeling I know what you mean, but I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, sure. And one stage in our book, we write, the future is queer, arguably very queer. But, look at high schoolers and freshmen. They don't go by she and he in nearly the amounts that you would think they do. There's a whole lot of they in there. There's a whole lot of fluidity that's going on that does not look temporary to me. So what we grew up in our cookie cutter pink and blue ribbons, the current generation that is coming of age is, I'm going to go ahead and say, totally liberated from that.
But Francis, and fluidity aside, we, coming out of Me Too and all of that, do you feel as though we're making significant progress, and how do you chart that?
So Me Too is a very interesting one because Me Too really hurts the and any of those kinds of harassment. So if you do look at any of the studies on harassment, women get harassed and gay men get harassed. And they vie for number one in various places. And to me, and here's what I like. Now there is a world where, like, what Me Too meant is that you're not alone. Like, I don't even know you, and I will text Me Too just to let you know the pervasiveness of it. And letting us know the pervasiveness of it means that no company can ever pretend it's not going on there. So everybody has to protect against it. So, like, it's a really, what were those small things we used to do? Right on the bathroom walls, like, don't stay late if David T is going to be here. There's now there's trust tech. There's all kinds of ways to report all of that so that crap doesn't happen in the shadows anymore. So I think we are evolving to take care of that. It's still the powerful and the power, but this technology can democratize the powerful in a hurry. Yep. I don't know a single CEO that wants to harbor people that harass on their senior teams. I don't know one.
And yes, Francis was talking about Engineer Dave just then. So
stop it.
We do have a lot of questions that have come in. I'd love to turn to a couple of those. So this is Haroon from New York, and the question is, what is your advice for companies who want to avoid creating bad cultures to begin with? Sure, you can try to fix a bad culture. You can bring in Francis Frye to do that. But this is the bigger question, why wasn't it right from the beginning?
Yeah. So cultures are often right in the beginning, and then contexts change and some of your cultural values get weaponized. So most companies that I go into had really strong cultures when they were born. So they had, for example, default to trust as a cultural value, which is a magnificent cultural value. Until I start using it as I'm a little tired, you're more junior than me, you start questioning me, and I'm like, default to trust, dude, just do it. I became selfish with our cultural values. Meritocracy used to be a beautiful cultural value until, some people did some studies and said that those that advocate meritocracy have never been subjected to one. And so then it became all kinds of crazy. So I think go about setting the cultural values for the ideals that will bring out the best in your team. Do cultural values check, but I'm going to tell you, there is a TikTok video or a R&B song or a hip hop song that might forever take away that beautiful language you have. And it's okay. Don't try to bring the language back. Just redo the cultural values. These should be living documents.
By the way, I would like to say this is the most nutritious conversation that anybody is having on election day in the U.S. right now, mostly because we're not talking about election day in the U.S. right now. So this is a question from Mark from Washington, D.C. So you talked about, getting past meritocracy as a concept or a grounding. So the simple question is, okay, what replaces meritocracy?
Well, this one has been the hardest one for me. So I grew up youngest of 6 kids, lower middle class. Like I got to where I got, Harvard said no to me 5 times. Like I got to where I got scrapping away by a meritocracy. And so I love the best person wins. It's just the problem is that what we found out is that it was, if a meritocracy is, my best way of doing it is if you were in the majority, you got the friends and family discount. And if you weren't in the majority, you had to pay sticker price. Like that's really what happened in the meritocracy is. The meritocracy was only applied to some, and it was typically only applied to the underrepresented. So I think here are things that help. Transparency help. Don't use words like fit. Anything that can be, so instead of like, do you fit at the Harvard Business School? Terrible question. But if we double click fit to the 5 operational questions that we can all observe, does teaching energize you? Will your research be read by practitioners? So take away the vague terms, add transparency. That will bring us to a real meritocracy. And that's what's best for underrepresented folks. Anything that you can get better because you learned it on a squash court, that's, I'm going to throw you in the deep end. One of the ones that makes my head spin. We have put invisible life preservers on the successful deep end swimmers for far too long. I would really just rather it be a fair fight.
So you seem very zen about the election and that the outcome will be like the outcomes of most elections, sort of smooth and reasonable. But even if that's the case, these are tough times. I mean, COVID is having, another serious spike. We could be in for more recession. So here's another question. This is from Harish from Massachusetts. Oh, no, sorry. This is from Rania from Beirut. And it's, what is your best advice? And I hope you draw from your awesome book, Unleashed, on this. What's your best advice for motivating people through difficult times?
I'm going to read to you the quote in the middle of the book. And thank you from my friend in Beirut for being able to do that. And it's a quote by Toni Morrison, and it really animated the whole book. Just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. What should we do? If you're free, help free somebody else. And if you have power, try to empower someone else.
Well put. All right, I'm going to do one more question. We're getting near the end of our time, but this is from Lucy from Scotland. So you had mentioned earlier about not caricaturing people, not seeing them in 2D.
Yeah.
So her question is really, so what do you, when you recognize that you're seeing somebody as 2D, how do you move on from that and see the person as?
Great question, Scotland. So with curious inquiry. So it turns out they are not 2-dimensional beings. And the best way to do it is to ask them questions you're super curious about the answer. Poof, they'll go from 2-dimension to 3-dimension.
That was easy. I love this. I think you're brightening up a lot of people's days. So I don't know, Josh, Octavia, do you have anything more to say before we bring this to a close?
No, this is really great. I mean, I think you've given us a lot to think about, especially not just today, but the days ahead when we're all going to be kind of, a little bit. These are tough times, and you give us a lot of great strategies to think about for how we can just interact better.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Francis.
I like being part of this quartet.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of cool. So Francis, really, from all of us, thank you for being here, and it was a great discussion. So we'll be here next week, same time, 12 noon Eastern, November 10th. Our guest will be Michael Sandel, who is a political philosopher and Harvard Law School professor of government theory. He's a prolific author, has just published himself an important new book called The Tyranny of Merit, What Has Become the Common Good. So,
we'll have to have Francis back.
I know, we're definitely
meritocracy with
continuing some of the themes. So with that, we will say goodbye. If you're in the U.S. and you haven't voted, go vote. Good luck to everybody today.
Go
We'll
vote.
see you next week. All right, welcome to the after party.
I'm sorry, I did have to laugh that Michael Sandel, we were not after Michael Sandel. The whole title of the book. But I feel like you can add a lot to that discussion.
Oh, I think he's shown he does just fine without me.
Yeah, you both do okay. So my problem is it's 6.5 hours before we're going to get any kind of results or numbers that mean anything. And I think that means my kitchen is going to get really clean.
Sparkling.
And Octavia, you're going to be eating a lot of snack cookies.
I'm going to be staying off social media.
Yes.
I will not be turning on the television.
Good.
Maybe walking around my block a few times and eating candy. Yeah.
I'm definitely getting that cheeseburger. There's no question about it. But this did make me like, this is better than a pharmaceutical drug. Like, I felt really good for this half hour. I don't know the rest of the day though. I don't know.
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry I made the crack about you being a creep in the office.
I thought it was me because David Tino. I was like, hey, that's my middle name.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
like,
well, maybe-
Francis, wow, some inside baseball.
You guys have something magical going. It's really
Oh, well, thank you. It's because people like you are willing to come on and be themselves. So that's
yeah,
what we do. But
Yeah.
well done.
Begin.
Some excellent comments from the folks.
Oh,
yeah, I
good.
know. Good questions from all over the world. It's really
Yeah, that geographic spread is just priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Francis, I have a question. What's it been like launching a book in a pandemic?
Good question.
I've been on a lot of podcasts. I think I'm done with podcasts. I feel a very big responsibility. HBS published the book. I want them to get book sales. Like it's for me and Anne, but it's also for the publisher. And so in the beginning, it was great. I didn't have to go anywhere. And then I did, 100 podcasts.
Oh,
Wow.
And everyone can see every one of them for the most part. So I think this book it's been received well, but I don't think there's much I can do to sell it right now. I think I'm just gonna, we just keep talking about it in places that come up. But honestly, Anne and I are starting our next book. We just
Wow.
well, if you're still with us, it's called Unleashed. You can get it. Nice.
Go get the book.
You can get it on Amazon.
thank you, Adi.
Wait, I have a tough question, but I was thinking about this. I listened to you talk about podcasts, so I was listening to Conan O'Brien interview Hillary Clinton on his podcast, and she is so different. And she even talks about like, okay, this is now. I'm out here now. I'm just. And you can't help but have such a different perception. But I mean, I guess I just felt like, why doesn't that come through with politicians when they're in the game?
Oh, I think it's a deliberate choice.
Yeah. That they're just
She
there.
could have been that person. She decided not to with the coaching of a lot of people and seeing a lot of data. It's really hard to be yourself when a lot of people are telling you that these voters want this, these voters want this, these voters want this, and then you stop trusting your judgment and then you're done.
Yeah. I know. In hindsight, it was the sort of likability factor, I guess, and
big time.
she didn't trust.
Yeah,
that.
nobody doubted her logic. Very few doubted her empathy, but people totally doubted her authenticity, which is a tragedy.
Yeah. No, I mean, she was so funny. She talked with Conan about doing a show on a motorcycle. She'd be in a.
No, her authenticity that's the thing. Anyone who knew her knew it was great. And so to let that go, and I remember I had a chance to give some advice, and it was, it was right after the first the first state reported. And I was like, you should trim your campaign to everyone who can fit in a single vehicle. Make the vehicle as large as you want. That's all you're allowed to have on the campaign.
Yeah.
And he said, and you should only think about this, this, and I didn't. Nobody paid any attention. It was right. It was right.
All right. You know, I'd love to chat, but I have to go clean the bathrooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. A total pleasure. I'm really glad you do this.
All right.
Thanks,
Great, Francis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Nice to see you.
All
All right. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.